Hi. Welcome. Great to see so many faces. Thank you for coming. As I understand, I'm supposed to speak to you in English, and you're all going to hear in Russian. In fact, most of you I see are without headsets, so I guess you all speak English, which is very cool. I have a question. How many people here are working in marketing? Okay, quite a lot of you. How many people are working in an advertising agency? Really? So few people. So all the marketing people are working client side. Okay, that's interesting. Fascinating. Shame on the advertising people for not being here. Okay, so I'm going to try and talk to you for about an hour on the idea of marketing is dead, long live marketing. I am Mike Gibson, and I work with an advertising agency called Adwise, and we do all the larger advertising here in Russia. And I also teach at the Britannica School of Art and Design, BHSAD. And I teach on the marketing and advertising course there. So, what I thought, so this is deliberately a sort of a provocative title, Marketing is Dead, Long Live Marketing. Any book or anything that sounds like that, automatically you put your head in your hands and you go, oh really? Does it have to have a name like that? But the idea was to try and sort of prompt us to have a little think about what is happening in the future of marketing, because things are changing. Some would say, some of my friends in London say that actually kind of marketing is in a bit of a crisis at the moment, as so much is changing, particularly the role of marketing directors. In London, a lot of marketing directors are working more and more on smaller stuff, and actually their marketing departments are becoming less relevant within the whole organization. In fact, the opposite needs to happen. The marketing departments need to become more and more important. And I'll get to that later on. But I thought I would do a little bit of history. Since I want to talk about the future of marketing, I think it's only fair and right to start with where we've come from. And some of you who've been working in marketing, this might be boring. There are only about 15 slides here, so just bear with me. So I've started with kind of marketing 1.0. And obviously, marketing 1.0 was back in the day, and that was all about products and mass production. Yep. So we had things being made in industrial processes. Obviously, probably the most famous proponents of that is Ford, who are famously credited with creating the kind of first mass production line, which was the Model T Ford. And that was kind of symbolic. It was the time when mechanization and products kind of met. We were able to churn out things to consumers sort of at an industrial scale. As for choice, there's a famous quote from Mr. Ford himself, which was, a customer can have a car painted any color that you want, so long as it's black, right? How many of you have heard that quote before? Okay, less than I thought. Okay, I'm just trying to get a measure of what you guys know and what you guys don't know, and who I should be kind of afraid of having the knowledge. And of course, I worked a lot with, as a creative director, I worked a lot with Procter & Gamble. Anyone here working in Procter & Gamble? So none of the marketing people here are from Procter & Gamble. Okay. Sorry? No. I love, quite the opposite. I love Procter & Gamble. They're great, actually. If any of you have the chance to work at Procter & Gamble, they're a very interesting company. And one of the world's biggest marketeers with some of the largest budgets. I last worked with them about 10 years ago. And of course, the world has changed a lot since I was working with them. So obviously anything that kind of links with mass production has to have soap in it. Yeah. So back then, the first production of soap, particularly ivory soap, was a sort of a mass-produced product, which was kind of the first thing that kind of got Procter & Gamble famous. Actually, I put a red splashka here. It should be Procter & Gamble products. And what's quite interesting is they were beginning to think, although we're in the age of products, they were beginning to think how much they realized it. They're beginning to think in terms of brands. Because rather than just calling it soap, they actually called it ivory soap, which actually to this day is still produced by Procter & Gamble. So it was actually named by the son of the founder, who thought it would be a good idea to look in the Bible. And one of the Psalms, he pulled out this quotation out of the ivory palaces whereby they have made thee glad. It's Psalms 45. So that's how ivory soap got its name. That was very important. There were two things that made it very successful. Obviously, product superiority and naming. Yeah, so the ivory name made it distinctive from everybody else. And then I'm going to quickly move into marketing 2.0. So now things have changed a bit. We no longer just have cars in any color you want, provided it's black, and mass soap. We're now beginning to actually think about what do consumers want. You know, what do they need? What are their desires? And obviously we've just had basically one type of soap before in marketing 1.0, but now Procter & Gamble have an awful lot more to offer. Yeah, so that's a contemporary line. Actually, it's slightly wrong because Pringles belongs to Kellogg's now. But basically, soap. There's a lot of soap here. So you've got Tide, you've got Ariel, you've got some shampoo. So soap is no longer just a single bar called Ivory. It's now kind of mutated into all sorts of different types, whether it's going to be for your hair, whether it's going to be for your clothes, whether it's going to be for yourself. So suddenly things have moved on apace because we're now actually talking to consumers and actually ascertaining what do they want, what do they aspire to have. And obviously we've seen stuff like that when you hunt online. And this is quite a good summary. Consumers are well informed. They compare and they search about products and services. The value of products and services, what a consumer considers it is worth. Okay, so you're beginning to change from price of things like a commodity. It's beginning to have a value, which is something inside people's heads. I used to work on some of the soap products, and I just have to show you some of these ads because I just kind of love them from the past. But what's quite interesting is, has anyone ever worked on soap? Detergents? No? Okay. So there are certain, all marketing departments will tell you they have their kind of the myths and the rules for selling their products. So when you are selling whites, often there's white, and then there's real white. Yeah. So obviously the superior product will give you the real white compared to the non-real white of competitors. And obviously here you're talking to mums. It's like, are you being the best mum you can possibly be? Yeah. Because obviously there's that desire to be a great homemaker for many women. So this appeals to that. Someone's mum doesn't know, yeah, that actually the white clothes could be much whiter. And you know, that was an ad from 1950. What I quite like, this actually is an ad from Procter & Gamble from 2005, so it's still 15 years old. And but I just love it. It's still got exactly the same thing going on in this ad as here, but just done in a really fun way. I'll show it to you. It's a piece of history, but it's quite funny.
Cleaner Clothes, Episode 1, and a shock for Maureen.
If you're going to play around in my house, Sean McGrath, don't play around with a grubby girl.
Hello, ma'am.
What? Have you never heard of Daz, love?
Yeah.
These little fellas fizz through the fibres of your wash, getting whites brilliant. Now that's white.
But that's not my bra.
So, who does wear a 34B in off-white? More importantly, who hasn't been using Daz, the soap you can believe in?
It's one of my sort of old favourite soap ads. I can see a few smiles, although it's absolutely ancient. Actually, that was a great campaign. Actually, they made a whole series. It was a soap opera. There were about 10 of these ads, and they're really funny. They're brilliant. That's another a lecture for another day. And then kind of moving, I'm going to race on. And then I want to go straight to kind of marketing 3.0. So we've kind of had products as commodities. We began to identify the consumer as the end user. What do they actually want? But now we begin to think, hang on a moment, maybe the consumer has heart and soul, right? So, of course, you remember Coca-Cola when they started naming bottles, personalizing things, campaigns such as that. Basically this stage, good definition here, this stage has evolved from treating the individuals as just consumers to treating them as human beings that have minds, hearts, and feelings. Now, in the history of advertising, Coca-Cola pretty much gives you a good example of just about everything at every stage. So here's another sort of a touchy, warmy, feely, kind of heartfelt Coca-Cola commercial from, again, about 10 years ago. But it kind of does the heart and soul thing about looking at the world slightly differently. Hang on. So let's look at the world a little differently, because we're not just consumers, but we're people with stories, hearts, and souls. So that's kind of, I think, the three stages that I'd like to identify before I kind of go into the marketing of the future. And it's quite interesting, actually. I just found this, it's a bit academic. But it's quite interesting. The American Marketing Association, in 1960, they said that advertising was the development of business activities that direct the flow of goods and services from producers to the consumers. That's 1960. And today, different definition. Marketing is the management process responsible for identifying, anticipating, and satisfying customer requirements profitably. Okay, so we've gone from goods and services, from producers to consumers, to satisfying customer requirements. So it's much more nebulous now. It's not about sort of concrete things. It's really quite different. We also have to identify what those requirements are. And of course, that's really the challenge. But it's different. Interesting just to note how over whatever 55 years that has changed so much. So marketing now. Yeah, what is it? There's definitely a crisis. Certainly people in London say that. There are certainly lots of things changing. Where we see from advertising, the role of advertising agencies, certainly the big multinational advertising agencies, the network agencies, that model has really broken. We see the rise of the small independent agencies, and there are a lot of very good small Russian agencies here. So in fact, if any international client were to come to Russia and say they want to find an agency, I'd tell them to look for a small Russian agency rather than to go with the big networks. And also a lot of these advertising agencies are now beginning to work with the consultants. Yeah, so Accenture, McKinsey, all these other people are now getting their foot into the door and getting very active in the creative process and in the marketing world. Just interested, so when I ask for hands for marketing people, about 25% of you put your hands up. Okay, of you marketing people, are any of you working with any of the big consultancy companies like Accenture, McKinsey, Price Waterhouse, all those guys? You are, okay, interesting. So something very interesting happened this year. Accenture, who are one of the biggest consultancy firms and do a lot of stuff in digital, they have actually bought one of the most famous small creative advertising agencies in New York called Droga 5, which was a big shock to the advertising world. Although, frankly, it's one of those things where I was kind of surprised that people were surprised, because it was one of the things that was going to happen at some point. And everyone was saying that the owners of Droga, specifically David Droga, was like a traitor who'd sold out to the evil Accenture. But he's not. He's just a smart guy who knows how to do business and knows where the world is going. So I said, what is marketing? What is marketing now? So let's just say marketing 4.0, just for the sake of putting a number on it. If anyone is into Kotler, anyone read Kotler? Marketing. So he kind of, this numbering is kind of similar with what he reckons, and he also has a number 4 as well, although his number 4 is not quite so clear, because he only just defined it like a year ago. And like anything that's still in the process of changing, we don't quite know. We haven't got the benefit of hindsight. We don't have the benefit of having a few years between what's happened and where we are now. But I've tried to, for the sake of just creating a list and trying to start somewhere. And I think if I were to do this talk in a week's time, I may change this. But I think what this list represents, I think, is very representative and very fair of the things I see. And we've just had the Cannes Advertising Festival in France. Has anyone been to the Cannes Advertising Festival? Yeah? Are you in marketing? You are, okay. Right. Only one person has been to the Cannes Advertising Festival. You've been? Okay, well that's good, because it means hopefully no one's seen any of the films I'm about to show you. So so a lot of this stuff is kind of from observations there, from speaking to people. I think there's a lot more, and I've probably got a big hole in digital, because I am not a digital, what do you call it? I'm a digital immigrant, not a digital native. So if anyone were to criticize me, it would be reasonable for them to say, Michael, I think we could perhaps flip a bit more digital into this. But I don't think I've missed it out. I think digital kind of, for me, in a way, is the air we breathe. I mean, everything is digital. And it defines the way we see the world. And certainly, I think these two would not be possible without digital. I think they exist because digital has opened our eyes and we know things about the world that we never knew 15 years ago without the benefit of social media. So what I want to do is I'm going to just go through these one by one. And I'll call this brand active. Now, there's a thing called brand purpose, which I think all brands need to have a purpose about them. But this is the stage further. It's a very good book, actually, which I picked up in Cannes by some very cool people, by an agency called The Future Brand Activism. And it's worth trying to get a copy. You can get a copy if you write to them online. But there's this idea that we actually need to believe in things and stand up for something. Yeah? And that's more than a purpose. I mean, every brand, all the brands that you marketing people, you all have a purpose, right? You kind of unite together in the marketing department with your various partners. And you have a vision of what you want to do, where you want to go, and the way you're going to do it. And that, that's kind of what gets you to work in the mornings. But activism is something more. It's about actually having some things you believe in. Maybe something you would find yourself in a difficult position of perhaps having to actually make some difficult decisions. About believing in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. Does anyone know what this picture is? Anyone seen it? One, okay. This is a case of the guy whose name, I'm just having a mental blank. He refused to stand up. Sparagalka, okay. Colin Kaepernick. Good American name. He is a football player in America, and he refused to stand up he's an immigrant, and he refused to stand up for the American national anthem before one of the games, okay? It was his protest, okay? It's his right to do it. Of course, it was a big deal. But what then became a bigger deal was that Nike decided to kind of endorse him and sponsor him. And everyone's like, what? Nike? What are you doing? Are you mad? Normally sponsors run away from people like that. It's like, ooh, we're afraid of you. It's like you've done something controversial and difficult and awkward, and ooh, we don't want to know you. Nike did exactly the opposite. And they actually endorsed him and said, yeah, we support you. And at some point, the people in the marketing department would be answering phone calls from probably the board of directors, shareholders, saying our share price has gone down 4%. Do you guys want to have a job tomorrow? That's tough. And I'll play you the case. Yeah, just have a quick look at this. So, that it's difficult when you have everyone screaming out against you. And the president, Trump, tweeted, he said, Nike, have you guys gone mad? Traitors. But then it all kind of worked out rather better than expected. So here we go. I'll just play this.
Several people posting videos burning Nike shoes.
Nike is running straight into a political controversy.
People are so angry they're burning their own shoes.
Colin Kaepernick refused to stand during the national anthem. taking a knee to protest police brutality.
Nike revealed Colin Kaepernick as the face of its latest marketing campaign.
Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything.
Is Nike taking a risk?
I think they're taking a stand.
Tonight, the first game of the new season, and Nike is running an ad featuring Colin Kaepernick.
If people say your dreams are crazy, good. Stay that way.
Most of this country was talking about this last night at their dinner table.
And I'm never buying another Nike product again.
Nike stock today dropping 3%.
Who's going to win this cultural showdown of standing for the anthem? We are.
Check this out. I went out today and bought me some Nikes.
I want to applaud Nike. Speak up. We're right behind you.
This thing is bigger than just the United States, and I think it resonates throughout the world.
Kaepernick asegura que es
Just do it.
Nike stock reached an all-time high last Friday.
I'm gonna buy more Nikes now.
Nike's on the right side of history.
So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
As what's his name, Lee said, Mike Lee said, Nike's on the right side of history in that story. And the fact is that there it is, outdoor. Yeah, they put it around in all the cities. His face looking down on people. Very strong image. And the facts of the matter is, consumers want to know, are you with me? And this is a huge deal. And in fact, this is supported by research. You know, in the Nike case, they were very much with Colin Kaepernick and supported him. And there is actually, this is astounding. This is actually only a year ago piece of research. So 64% of consumers around the world will buy or boycott a brand slowly because of its position on a social or political issue, a staggering increase of 13 points from 2017. Yeah, so I mean that's massive change. People actually want brands to stand for things. They don't want brands to sort of desert issues. They don't want them to be indifferent. They want them to take a stance and believe in stuff. And we could say, well, you know, Moscow, Russia, I heard this a lot, actually. It's like, Russia's different. It is. I don't deny that. But actually, Moscow is, you know, it's a global city, and things are changing here really fast. Now, you see the way the infrastructure of Moscow changes. I think you have one of the most interesting, certainly one of the cleanest cities. It's cleaner than London. There are a lot of interesting things going on in the parks. Nothing comparable in London. You have some recycling stuff. Now, I would say the United Kingdom is ahead of Russia in recycling, but it's changing here. You know, in our office, we have some of the young creatives who've actually put together collection and sorting in our office. So now we don't just chuck stuff out, okay? Now some of the cynics go, well, Michael, you know, you collect it and then they put it in the bin, and then the guys who collect the bins and put it all back together. Yeah, there were some stories of that in a sort of, you know, delightful kind of sort of Russian непонятно kind of way. But that's changed, though. That is now, you know, those are sort of one-off things. And in fact, recycling is happening here properly and seriously. And also in, there's a recent survey actually by Resonance, which was a body outside of Russia, of the top cities of the world. In fact, Moscow came 6th. Yeah, so it was like, it's ahead of Dubai, it's ahead of Singapore, it's ahead of Chicago, and ahead of San Francisco, which were 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, London was number 1. Okay, that's sort of probably not a surprise. And I think Paris and New York, but you know, Moscow was a very solid 6th. Yeah. So what else was ahead? I think Tokyo and Barcelona, Paris, London. I can't remember which the fifth one was. So Moscow is, is a worldwide, an international city, and things changing here really fast. So when we look at statistics like this, and you go, well, yeah, it's probably not Russian. I'll go, well, hang on a moment. Maybe actually we're not far away from that. Yeah, I mean, maybe we need to take this into account. And it's quite interesting. I actually heard this on the radio on Sunday. This lady called Dame Sally Davis was giving an interview. She's the Chief Medical Officer of the UK. She's talking about her job, interesting person. And she said, think what we're trying to counteract. So she's responsible for the health of the United Kingdom and for government health programs. She says, think what we're trying to counteract, which is commercial people who spend billions and billions on marketing unhealthy foods and drinks. We've got to be clever. And I suddenly looked at it, I thought, oh my goodness. Commercial people, marketing, we're the enemy in that statement. And so she's holding us responsible for marketing, drinks with too much sugar in, oversizing portions in McDonald's, etc., etc. All the regular things. So she's actually, drawing a line in the sand and saying, these guys are the enemy. And in a way, it's marketeers have a social responsibility. Just looking at the amount of sugar in all these drinks. There's a lot of sugar in Fanta. That's 74 grams. It's 17 teaspoons. So marketeers have a social responsibility to actually stop peddling rubbish to people and actually trying to make people's lives better, not worse, for using their products. In the UK, obesity, being overweight, is on the increase. It's a huge, huge problem. In fact, according to this woman who was talking about the issue, she was saying, it should be up there as a bigger risk as terrorism, because it's causing huge problems like diabetes, cancer, a bunch of other stuff. Marketeers have a responsibility to do something about the sugar. Now, it is changing. I can't see. Okay, you've got Diet Coke, but there are a bunch of now sort of hipster lemonades and other interesting beverages that are trying to reduce the amount of sugar. So things are changing. Here's another case, okay, which I think is interesting from Cannes, about brands trying to have a social responsibility. This is a project by Volvo. And bless the Swedes, they're a very kind of social conscious kind of nation, and what is remarkable about this is that there's a whole body of research they have done based on women crash test dummies in car accidents. Now, I suppose you never thought about it before. All crash test dummies are male. As a result, women suffer more in crashes than men because their body weight isn't quite right. Deviates from the statistics. But who, of course, should have the statistics for women crash test dummies? Of course, it's Volvo. Now that's a piece of proprietorial intelligence. That's something they could use as a competitive advantage to beat the competitors, right? In a sort of a wild market situation, they could go, you know what, that we're going to use, and we're going to sell our Volvos by saying they're safer for women than other cars. But they didn't do that. They actually made all that research available for everybody. They said this research is so crucial to humanity, we cannot sell it, by making it an advantage for our cars. This research is now available for anyone who wants to use it in the design of safety features for their cars. I think it's phenomenal. I think this is very much part of the sort of the future of where brands and marketing is going.
Women are 71% more likely to be injured in a car crash and 17% more likely to die. The reason? Most cars are tested on male crash test dummies. But not at Volvo. They have collected real-world data since the 1970s to learn what happens during a collision, regardless of size or gender. What if we could use this data to make all cars safer for women? Introducing the EVA initiative. We collected all of Volvo's research and made it available to everyone in a digital library consisting of data from more than 43,000 collisions and 72,000 people. For the first time ever, anyone could download the research and learn how it has led to some of Volvo's most innovative safety systems. To make the data more human, we gave the numbers a face and created a film that showed how this injustice affects women in a personal and direct way. EVA was introduced at a live-streamed event where journalists and competing brands could tune in.
The data helped us to understand the mechanism and the importance for all people. And we want the rest of the industry to do the same.
Then we launched a global campaign across a wide range of media. The initiative quickly became news and sparked a global conversation about equal road safety.
Event of kind of whiplash and injuries like this, but also they're not just keeping the data for themselves. This data and analysis that they've done is also on their website, so it's open to all car manufacturers to kind of improve safety for women in particular.
But most importantly, this will make all cars safer for everyone.
It's a great case, and it's a great example, I think, of a brand taking an active stance on an issue and saying safety is something that we're going to stand for. They made a campaign about it, so they have told the world, and in many ways it actually will work better for them, just as we saw with the Nike when they stood by Colin Kaepernick. The stocks went down, but eventually it all came back up again. There's another case here in this, which I want to show. It's interesting. Back to my favorite guys, Procter & Gamble. And they wanted to make a stand about toxic masculinity with Gillette. And I think it's fair to say that sort of sexism in advertising is fairly rampant. Even when you have fairly sort of mild brands like Gillette, which you couldn't really accuse of some of the heinous sort of sexist communication we see in some industry sectors. But even so, it still uses, particularly the ad on the left, uses all the sort of the classic stereotypes of the kind of the good-looking guy, a woman kind of appreciating his skin, and what Gillette then decided to do. They also run a lot of these kind of very kind of macho Gillette ads of sort of flying aeroplanes and turbocharged things and closer cuts and all the rest of it. And their tagline is the best a man can get. Yeah? Makes sense. Best shave a man can get. But also it means I'm bettering myself. So it's best as in product performance, best in what I become. That's a good tagline. But they then decided, okay, let's stand for something. Let's have a look at male behavior and see if we can twist that, the best a man can get, and make it into the best men can be. Yeah, so talking about potential. So they then made this ad, which was very controversial. Of course, it sparked outrage with the sort of basically the white male Anglo-Saxon set in the United States. And Procter & Gamble took a stand, like Nike. They went, you know what? We're not going to budge. This is what we believe, and we stick by it. And here is the ad.
Bullying.
The Me Too movement against sexual harassment.
Masculinity.
Is this the best a man can get? Is it? We can't hide from it.
Sexual harassment is taking over.
It's been going on far too long. We can't laugh it off.
Who's the daddy?
What I actually think she's trying to say.
Making the same old excuses.
Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys.
But something finally changed.
Allegations regarding sexual assault and sexual harassment.
But she says
And there will be no going back. Because we believe in the best in men.
Men need to hold other men accountable.
Smile, sweetie.
Come on.
To say the right thing. To act the right way.
Bro, not cool, not cool.
Some already are. In ways big and small.
I am strong.
But some is not enough.
Is that how we treat each other, okay? Okay.
Because the boys watching today will be the men of tomorrow.
So it's only by challenging us to do more that we can reach the best inside us. Do you just interesting, show of hands, did you like that? Yeah? Anyone not like it? Let's just do that. Don't be shy. You can. Okay, apparently no one like. Okay, let's interesting. So of course they, as a Guardian article from the United Kingdom, of course there was a whole lot of screaming and shouting against it, and P&G did not give in. They did not pull the ad. They did not change it. They stood by it. And they said, this is what we believe. And the message is a positive message at the end of the day. It's basically saying, actually, we can all be better. And there's a whole idea of, guys kind of looking out for each other and helping them achieve the best and sort of behaving properly. But the article's interesting because all sorts of guys here who boycott Gillette and said they're never going to buy it. And it's very interesting. The head of marketing of Procter & Gamble was at Cannes this year, and he was talking a lot about this campaign. And he was saying, we looked at all the trolling that we were getting and all the stuff. We made the decision that we would stay by this because, like Nike, they believed in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. So I'm going to show you a few more cases, I think, which are very interesting from Cannes. There's a nice case, again, Sweden, IKEA. This is interesting. This is actually a case that comes from Israel. And the agency there has, in the creative department, has people of all sorts of, they have different types of people, handicapped people, different nationalities. And this idea actually came from one of the handicapped creatives in the agency. And what was interesting is they were saying that when you have a room with 15 diverse people, be different nationalities, races, different abilities, maybe they're blind or deaf or have a handicap, or alternatively abled. A room with all these different people in, if you like, have 15 of them, they're actually more effective at thinking than 150 people who are the same, kind of all saying the same thing, believing the same. So only when you get diversity working together that you actually have a very interesting range of thoughts and ideas. And this is a small kind of case. I don't think it's one of those sort of big, standing for a principle like Procter & Gamble and Nike did, but I think it's a very interesting little idea. And they use 3D printing to modify existing IKEA furniture so that disabled people can use it. Yeah, it's an idiot simple idea, really. And you can get the file sent to you by IKEA. I think you can print it out in the store. If you're far away from IKEA store, you can print it out in a local place that has a 3D printer. Simple things that make the lives of people who are handicapped completely different and makes them able to use the furniture. And it has brilliant copywriting. In English, we call people disabled. This campaign is called Disables. Yeah, so it's a very nice way of going from disable to disables. So actually, this helps them get things done. So.
Although I have cerebral palsy, I do everything I can to conduct myself like everyone else. But in my own home, I'm surrounded with furniture crying out, cripple. I'd like to sit on a regular sofa without being afraid I won't be able to get up.
IKEA's vision is to create a better everyday life for the many. Disables give simple and affordable home furnishings for 10% of the population.
Every person is different depending on their needs.
Disability drives innovation. Even in some of our public libraries, there's 3D printers.
A lot of solutions, they've been very medicalized down through the years, and nothing as cool as anything you've produced.
ועכשיו אנחנו רוצים להראות לכם יוזמה מיוחדת של רשת איקאה שנקראת Disables.
יוזמה חשובה שתקל על אנשים עם מוגבלויות איקאה, עם ארגון נגישות.
Very interesting line. Disability drives innovation, and at the end of the day, that 25% of your work in marketing departments, at some point you've got to put an ROI on all that. You've got to put numbers behind it. It's all got to make sense to a CEO, to owners of the company or shareholders. But you see all those cases we've actually shown have the numbers behind them as well. Yeah, you saw increases in sales here. You saw both Nike and Gillette. Actually, Gillette didn't have any numbers, but certainly the Nike case, we saw how that did actually increase and work for them in the market. So this, I think, is very much this is my kind of first of my three legs. And so the next one I'm going to go into, so brand active was the first one. Yeah, so stand for something, have a belief, and die on your sword if you need to. The next one is kind of what I call part of the story, where the way that we interact with the world around us is now so enabled through technology and social media, is that we don't have to just stand and take stories in. We can actually kind of live the story, be part of the story, contribute to the story. And there's this thing which they always talk about, storytelling. Yeah? I've probably heard that word so often, I always don't want to hear it again. Storytelling, everything's about telling stories. I mean, storytelling is important because we all love stories ever from childhood. They're the things that have been close to our hearts. They sort of bind us to our mum. They bind us. Well, even Jesus decided to tell stories when he wanted to make things clear. He called them parables. So storytelling is a crucial part of what makes us us. But the thing we can move from, and I think is the challenge to the next stage in marketing, is go from storytelling to story doing. Yeah. So storytelling, basically, what I'm saying is it's sort of going from passive, I sit here and consume, to active. I'm part of the story, and we can do it. We've got all these so many different things we can do through digital and the various different platforms are on offer that enable us to engage and interact and share. I try to go to the cinema at least once a week because I think it's a very important medium, and there's so many fantastic stories out there. Even if you go to the cinema once a week or twice a week, you can't get through all the films that need to be seen. But the thing that always amazes me is cinemas. Back in the UK, all these cinemas go, no one's coming to the cinema anymore. Our sales are going down. It's like, and I sit there and I go, get with the program, guys. It's like, of course it's going down. You've got to change it from a place that's about sitting there passively absorbing stories to making it an experience about, sharing something with people, and, making it a destination that people want to go to, some of the cinemas in Moscow, I think, have done a very good job of that. Things like Pioneer, I think, are quite nice because they've got bookshops and other things going on in their restaurants. And a bunch of other cinemas that have done a good job of that. But one of the greatest things in the UK is this thing called secret cinema. Has anyone heard of this? If you look at the figures for the top 10 movies at the box office last week in the UK, and in fact, you can do it quite often. Casino Royale is at 4th place, right? It's the box office income in the whole United Kingdom. 4th place is an event for Casino Royale. Yeah, basically it's a clever bunch of people who have basically taken over some huge spaces in the East End of London. That's sort of like Art Play or Vinzavod, one of those sort of old sort of empty spaces, and they recreate scenes from the film, and you go there and you actually are part of the film, right? You then watch the film, I think, for about 2 hours in the middle of the evening, but you go there for probably about 6 to 8 hours, and you have a experience, Casino Royale or whatever the movie is. It's very secretive. You're not allowed to tell anyone what you do, where you go. It's all this sort of mystique and sort of mystery stuff going on. It kind of makes it all the more intriguing. It's like, oh, I want to go and find out. And everyone who goes loves it. And it's not cheap, Like all these things, these guys, cinemas struggle to get, whatever it is, £20 off people to go and see a cinema, see a movie in London. These guys charge you about £150, £100 to £150 for a ticket, and people go, yeah. So that's a classic example of storytelling, story doing. You just have people sitting there actively. You show them a movie, but if you make them part of the story and change everything, crucially change the way that people consume the story and make them part of it, suddenly everything changes, and you can charge 5 times the ticket price. Very interesting. This is a PSA, or public service announcement from Chicago, and it's kind of dark on the screen, but you can see the most important thing. So Chicago has gun crime issues, a lot of killings, shootings on the streets. And what they wanted to do, you can keep on. There's so many posters you can show people, so many bits of movie, film stuff on whatever social platform. There's so much stuff you can push out to people. So they decide what they do is to actually make it come alive. They made this installation in one street in Chicago where there have been a number of shootings. And actually they recreated the shootings there. They actually had a sort of red laser bullets, red laser light, which basically showed you the trajectory of the bullet. Yeah, that came from the person that shot to the victim. And then each victim is then immortalized in a little name, which was projected on the wall or on the floors, showing who was the person that was shot. And suddenly it gets people involved in the story. Yeah, they're in the space where shootings have happened. They can actually feel and sense and get a completely different impression of what's going on. That's, for me, that's the way we should be thinking more about the way we market brands. This is an interesting case. This actually is, sometimes it's interesting to look at the silvers and the bronze cases because they can be also really cool. And this is a lovely idea. Again, it's sort of about involving people in the story process. This is it's based on the Instagram platform, and when people are looking, for destinations, you sort of go through Instagram feeds, and you might be looking through China. And what the German railway did was to see that Michael is spending a lot of time looking at pictures of the Philippines. Yeah, so then started analyzing the pictures that Michael was looking at of places in the Philippines, and through some clever algorithms, it might suddenly identify an object or a place, a building, that actually they could find an equivalent looking building or object in Germany. And then they'd figure out the price for me to fly to the Philippines to see this thing that I've been looking at on Instagram. That's like whatever, sort of $800. Or they just show me the price to travel on German railways to see a similar looking thing in Germany. It's actually a really neat idea, but it's a lovely way of sort of getting the story, getting us involved in the story, me searching for things. I want to go somewhere, and German railway are going, actually, why don't you just stay at home and buy a ticket and travel on the German railways and have a local adventure? I think it's really a neat idea. I'll play you the case.
This was just the beginning. Then we asked ourselves, how can we bring even more relevance and attention to each comparison? First, we developed an algorithm that searches for look-alike photographs. Through Facebook data, we found travel enthusiasts like Lucas who are interested in specific destinations. Geo-targeting pinpoints Lucas' current location and the closest airport. Another algorithm finds the destination airport. A search engine identifies the cheapest flight price for Lucas in real time. A unique social media price comparison, completely automated in an infinite number of variations.
It's a very nice little case. Yeah, it's clever, isn't it? So neat. Yeah, and that's I think, you know, but there's certain things. I mean, if you go through my list, you go, well, Michael, where is data in your list? Yeah, if I go back to my list, it's like, where's data? Where's social media? See, I think all things like data and social media are inside these things, because that last story was about some very clever, smart people who were like going through data, who are like analyzing, creating algorithms, you know. So in many ways, a lot of these things here actually require, and I'm not being channel specific. I'm saying that these are sort of directions, general directions, and then we need to go and find whatever technology or whatever medium it is that gets us there. I'm supposed to question to organizers. I've been talking for an hour. Can I go on for another 15 minutes? Есть какие-то вопросы по времени? Yeah? Okay, it's cool. And then I love Marmite. Anyone know this product? 1, 2. Do you like it? No, you never tried it. Lady in pink, do you like it? Oh, you never tried it? You hate it. I love you. And you love it. There we go. Thank you very much. I couldn't have dreamed for a better audience. This is a very famous product in the UK that people either love it or they hate it. And it really is like that. Yeah, I mean, I haven't set these people up. I haven't talked to them before the meeting. And what's genius is they've actually created a campaign all about love and hate. So what I love about it is this is actually a Unilever product. They actually create ads that say, you know, people hate Marmite. Yeah, it's like, you know, either you hate it or you love it. You see, you're either a lover or a hater. Yeah. So Bush. Yeah, some people love him or they hate him. Mr. Bean. You know, some people deplore him or they think he's really funny. They keep on doing kind of very clever campaigns based on the same idea of love and hate. So this was another year they had elections. So they created the love parties, you know, spread freely. And then they had the hate party, yeah. If cow pats were rich in B vitamins, would you eat them? You know, so, you know, and it's great. Here's a marketer. Here's a Unilever who go, you know what? Let's have an ad campaign. It's all about hating our product. That's pretty brave. You know, so hate, love. Someone said, oh, hang on. Why don't we see if you are genetically predisposed. Does that translate into Russian? Genetically predisposed to hate or love Marmite. It's ridiculous, isn't it? It's one of those sort of ideas that came out in a creative brainstorming, and they went, that's crazy. You know what? Why don't we test it? Let's go to a real science institution and ask them to do some gene testing, however that works, and see if it is true that we can see in people's genes if they love or hate Marmite. And they sent it off. They thought it was a joke. And the research, real scientific research, came back from a proper scientific organization that said, yep, it's true. We can look at people's genes and we can tell that they love it or they hate it. Yeah? Now, don't ask me how they, the science behind that. So then what they did is they went, oh, that's really cool. Why don't we create a special gene testing kit? So you can actually get this testing kit sent to you, or we can send it to a friend. And, it actually has like, you do a sort of like a swab around your mouth and like stick it in the tube and you send it off and they'll do a test on you or your friend or your partner or whoever. And it's a lovely way of sort of making that sort of story sort of come alive. It's like getting you to sort of interact, be part of it. They also happen to make one of my favorite ads ever, which they ran on British TV. Which was basically about the gene test, and it's just superb.
Yes,
They're here.
this should be interesting. Please find and close the results of your family's recent Marmite gene tests.
These show whether you were born a lover or a hater.
What does it say? You're a hater?
Dad.
Yeah.
I need to tell you something. I'm a Marmite lover.
I thought you said I hated it, and this says I love it. What type of mother does something like that?
But baby,
Oh my goodness, I am so stupid.
I prefer jam.
I'm carrying a hater's baby!
It's basically choking my childhood!
Oh, sweetheart.
Come here, son. You don't care. Oh, we just want you to be happy with who you are.
Have you ever done it here? In this house?
Yes. I only did it to make you happy.
Do I look happy? On this table?
Yes.
Ah!
Baby, please don't!
I don't hate Marmite, I hate you!
I can learn, look.
Get in, all lovers.
I hate it! I hate it!
He's never even tried it.
Are you a born a lover or a hater? Test it for yourself. Marmite Gene Project. But it's lovely, and it's a lovely way of getting that story again. We've all known in the UK, and you can actually now become part of it by getting the test, which is kind of fun. I was actually at Cannes this year, sitting next to some Russians during one of the one of the award ceremonies, and they won some prizes. And the Russian guys next to you said, "Michael, what on earth is going on in that ad?" I was going, "Well, it's an English thing. You have to understand Marmite, and let me explain." And then, then they went, "Oh yeah, it's a really great idea." So I've got a few more minutes, and so we've talked about sort of brand activation, standing for things, which is like hugely relevant to the consumers. It's not just the young kids, it's actually across the board. We talked about being part of the brand story, and this one, part 3, I'll try my best. I don't know if I've really quite explained this as clearly as I wanted to, and I'll probably wake up tomorrow morning and have a fresh head. But what I want to do is talk about kind of the new marketing departments. And what's quite interesting, there have been a lot of discussions recently, and there were a lot of discussions at Cannes about the way that the marketing departments will kind of look and work in the future. CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. So what does he look like in the future, and how does that work? So there are talks, people in London saying, marketing officers are now being more and more sidelined. They're much more short-term people who are involved with price strategies and sort of tactical campaigns, and they're not really getting involved or not being allowed to be involved, or somehow missing out on being involved in the bigger picture, right? So what I was trying to say is that actually the marketing people, I think, have a hugely important role, which I think goes beyond... Chief Marketing Officer. Okay, so there'll be a few C's here. Beg your pardon. And there's the C is basically the sort of the board, the chief guys. Yeah, so there'll be a CEO, Chief Executive Officer, CHRO, Chief HR Officer, a couple of others I think will come up. What's very important is actually the marketing people have, in some ways, a much bigger role to play than they did in the past. Because they're going to be responsible in the sort of ideal organization, I think, for doing much more than just looking after the way that marketing, basically marketing a brand. They've got actually going to go a stage further. So chief marketing officers are going to become like key players in bridging the relationships between the other members of the C-suite. The C-suite is the chief guys, okay? So that's chief marketing officer, chief executive officer, chief managing, there should be a chief treasury or chief financial guy, and chief HR. HR also is very important because human resources. Anyone work in human resources here? No, you work in human resources? Great. So the chief marketing person actually has a crucial role to try and actually bridge the relationship between all these different people. Yeah, because they're all going kind of, in many ways, doing their own little thing, whether it's going to be doing human resource planning, whether it's going to be financial planning, whether it's going to be an overall view of the future of the organization. It's the marketing person that, in a way, needs to sort of bind them together. So they need to be able to bridge the relationship between the other members of the suite of the C-suite. And in order to do that, they have to sort of have a mindset shift. They've got to stop thinking about, I live in my little marketing department, and what happens beyond isn't important. They've got to think about, in order to make a success, I need to have, the HR people working with me, because we need to have great talent in this company in order to be able to get, the best products and services created. Not just me in my marketing department with the best talented people working for me, but across the organization. And in many ways must be part of actually driving the strategy of the organization, not just of the marketing plan for the company. Then there's advice for all marketeers: collaborate with other areas of the business. So don't just like sit inside the marketing department, but actually try and find out what's happening, across, maybe. So when I worked at Procter & Gamble, they were quite a transparent company and quite friendly. So I worked for them. I was in Grey. So we used to go and visit their head offices in Brussels, and we would then sit there and talk with other people inside the Procter & Gamble organization. And often we talk to a lot of their science people, research people, and you learn so much by talking to people. When you're trying to think about how to do a Mr. Proper ad, for cleaning floors, you can suddenly get all sorts of interesting insights by talking to the people that are actually making the stuff and testing it. And then you can go, hang on a moment, can we try this crazy test? And they go, actually, yes, we can. Why don't we give it a go? So it actually becomes very important for the marketing people to actually get out of the marketing department and wander around, the business and develop relationships and see what other people are doing and try and understand the way things are working in the business. And if you have a big factory in whatever it is that you do, I don't know if you make cars or maybe you produce food or you package Lay's crisps or Pringles or something. There's always a lot of interesting stuff to learn walking around the factory floor. Every time I go into a factory for any of our clients, it's like an epiphany. Sometimes I think, my God, am I really that stupid? I didn't know that stuff before. But you go there and you always learn something. So if you have the opportunity to be able to be talking to people there and actually exchanging information, it's very valuable. And also this is a bit specific advice for chief executive officers, plural. Is the chief marketing officer empowered to act like a unifier? So sometimes basically what I'm saying here is that if the chief marketing officer is going to be successful here, he needs the chief marketing officer he needs to basically, the chief marketing officer needs the support of the chief executive officer. So that's some of the things that I identified in quite a lot of the conversations that were had in Cannes about the way marketing departments are changing. What's very interesting is my favorite agency, Adam and Eve. In fact, the agency that made the Marmite ad that you just saw. And these guys, I love these guys. I could do another hour lecture just on them. A lot of brilliant work. Does anyone know the John Lewis Christmas ads? Does that mean anything to anybody in this room? Okay, right. Okay, these guys make all those John Lewis Christmas ads. Okay, so they're super cool. And one of the things he said, actually, Richard Brim, who's our chief creative officer, he said, "We are one team with the client. We never come and make big presentations." I love that. Because it's like the way that normally it's like, we're an agency and we're all going to make all these sort of, do all this work and do a presentation and run off to the client and, have a big presentation, and then there'll be, we'll go away for 2 weeks, or if it's a pitch, there'll be 3 other agencies behind us. And I don't necessarily know if that's the best way of actually getting the best work done. Yeah. There's some very interesting ideas that are said by, Ogilvy. He's he's an ancient guy. Obviously, he's a bit of a dinosaur, but he's like any old deerdushka. He's got a lot of good advice. And one of the things he said is that he didn't believe in pitches. Now, okay, you can go, well, of course you don't, because you're an agency guy and you don't want to have to pitch for your business. But actually, it's more than that, because he gave some very good reasons. And he was saying, that clients need to work hard to figure out what it is about an agency they like and don't like. They need to understand if there's chemistry and stuff like that. And often you can get better results by not always going into a pitch situation, because pitches are kind of like car crashes. It's like when you drive past a car crash, everyone has a look, because it's kind of like sort of gross and exciting all at the same time. And that's sort of a bit like pitches. So these guys actually don't do big presentations. They work together. In a sort of collaborative way. And all that was really interesting. And you see the work they do is fantastic, yeah? So, the John Lewis stuff. You've just seen the Marmite. There's a bunch of other things as well. So these guys are, they kind of know what they're talking about, and they're very successful. Yeah, I was trying to put, I don't know if my thought is clear here. You can tell at the end of the presentation, all the pictures stop and it's just words. So here it's like companies, managers, and marketing specialists. So that basically that's the guys in the companies need to see consumers, employees, suppliers, and shareholders as an integral part of their marketing strategy. Basically, as kind of one team, you need to basically consider these people together. Things like employees are really important in an organization, because they're kind of, if you've got the employees not believing in what they're doing, or kind of building cars but not kind of loving it, the employees are basically a very important part of getting kind of the message out. I mean, you think about Starbucks, yeah? I mean, they're you may hate them, but you can't deny the fact they're very successful. And they actually train their employees to, properly behave, I think. You walk in, they're always polite. When you leave, they always say goodbye. It makes a huge impression on me. I don't know if you've noticed it. They're the only coffee chain that does it, and you think, how hard is it just to say hello and welcome people, when they come in? And of course they do the whole write the name on the cup thing. But that's the thing about getting your employees behind the brand. I think we all need to know is that we're all we're better informed than ever before, right? So whatever we do, whatever any marketing department does, everyone will find out, because it goes around the world, within 30 minutes, anything happens and everybody knows, yeah? Because, it's the first time in history that, that just never was like that when I first started in advertising 20 years ago. And of course, we are better informed and we're better misinformed, like anything that works, like anything that is, I think, a force for good. And I think this social media is a force for good. There are two things. The graph goes up, very good, and the graph goes down, very bad. Yeah. So hopefully, we're on the right side of the graph. We do everything in our power to try and make it good. But the fact is, because we're all, we got these things in our pockets. Everything we do, we are informed. So those campaigns, the Gillette, the Nike one for Colin Kaepernick, all that stuff couldn't happen without the fact that we're all kind of like majorly informed, right? Even that nice railway one, German railway, that's about information. It's a different type of information, it's data. But he's looking at stuff across the world and looking at things in China. When I was at university, we couldn't do that. That didn't quite have the internet when I was at. I didn't have the internet when I was at university. I mean, it's unbelievable, really, when you think about it. So anyway, that was just that. I'm trying to I don't know how well I've done it, but that was my third step. My third step was, is trying to rethink about the marketing departments in a different way. And it should be much more than a marketing department. It should be something that basically is a unifying force that brings together all the different aspects of a company. And also they need to bring together all the different aspects of like consumer, suppliers, shareholders, and stakeholders. Yeah, so they have actually a very important role to play. And it's quite interesting. I don't know where it's going to go. It's not clear. And my friends in England were saying it's a crisis. And we see people like clever people like Accenture and McKinsey who are stepping in and beginning to sort of lap up and do all these tasks. So who knows, maybe marketing departments won't exist in companies anymore. Maybe it will be inside Accenture. I think that would be a shame, but I still think we have all that to play for. So really that's kind of just to conclude, that was my marketing 4.0. I think tomorrow we could probably write a different list, but I think brand active, stand for something, part of a story, so your story should be alive and not passive, and look at the way the marketing department can evolve. And always, like my last slide is that you always get out what you put in, so as much energy you put into making these happen, I always think comes back and revisits you. And that's the end. Thank you. If there are any questions, you're free to ask. Даже можно на русском. Multi-level marketing. You mean in the sense of... can you give me some examples? You mean peer-to-peer marketing? You mean peer-to-peer? Yeah, I'm trying to go with it. Как с этого? Right, pyramid marketing. Okay, yeah. Peer-to-peer. Yeah, okay, yeah, right. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a difficult that one because people I think call it pyramid, which I think is unfortunate. Because there are a few of them in Russia. There's like NL International. Do you know those? Yeah. There's Amway. And people go, oh, it's a pyramid. It's all going to come tumbling down. But actually, I think it's very interesting because when you look at the marketing departments of companies, there's a lot of money spent in maintaining a marketing department. All the salaries, all the people. It's a big machine. They then all have the sales force that needs to go out and sell all the products. But people like NL International and Amway, what's interesting is that money they keep within themselves by creating a network who they sell through. So I think actually it's a very interesting proposition. Do you work in a set of a... Which one? NL? Okay. Ah, right. Okay. Interesting. A chemist. Yeah. Пожалуйста. Thanks for coming. Right. Bye-bye. So it's a financial system. I mean, I think the last thing I'd say to that is that people go, oh, it's pyramid, and there's quite a lot of negative around it. But I was going at Amway. How long has Amway been on the market? It's been around forever. It's still going strong. It's just a different model of. Pajolsta, thank you for going. It's just a different model. So I think it's interesting. I have no direct experience of working in them, but I think the theory is kind of intriguing. Oh yeah, so I should have put some slides in at the beginning. So I worked at McCann Erickson for a bunch of years, and I was creative director at Grey for about 6 years. Then about 10 years ago, I decided I didn't like Setovaya against Pajolsta. Thank you for coming. Didn't like the network agencies. Because they were too annoying, they were too foreign, and they were like guys sitting in London and New York telling us how to do advertising in Russia. So then I've now worked with Russian advertising agencies. Все слышно, можно просто громко.
Okay. So, if I correctly understand that you have been working in the company which main office situated in London, and you...
No. I've actually been working in Russia for it was 20 years or so.
Oh, okay. I just understand what's the company and the product.
So works in McCann Erickson. So McCann Erickson works on Nestle.
Nestle.
Yeah, Nestle. Some Coca-Cola, L'Oreal, Visa, and then Grey spent a long time working on Procter & Gamble. In a big way.
Okay.
And then I've worked with Russian brands on a lot of cars. So things like Mitsubishi and now Lada. So our agency does all the Lada ads.
Okay, and so your task was to...
Creative director.
Create what?
Creative director.
So
Tvorческий, I don't know, director.
Okay, so you have been designing the ad. Yeah?
Writing ads, yeah.
Okay.
With a creative team.
And what are the main criteria to do a good advertising?
Oh my goodness, we'd have to be here a long time. Come afterwards and I'll talk with you. Does anyone else want to ask any questions? Got a couple. Come and we'll have a chat afterwards, yeah? Because actually criteria for making good advertising is... Oh, right. Поколение pair, right. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right. Come and chat at the end.
Yeah, so I would like to ask about, so you said about marketing, and is there any perspective for marketers in the future? Because I don't quite understand. Is this job is going to be demanded in the market in the future, or it all going to be replaced in 10 years? Because I'm an economist. I've just graduated this year. And what I'm going to do, I want to go to the marketing. And now I hear that it's not maybe so perspective as I thought.
That's interesting. That's an interesting question, because that's not quite that's not the impression I wanted to give. So I'm glad you asked that question. Because I didn't say it's without perspective or without hope. I never said that. I said, in fact, that there is a crisis and there are various factors pulling it in different directions. But actually, the slide, I would say this slide, it was about 3 or 4 slides ago. This one actually says that the marketing guys are kind of the most important.
So
yeah, but there are a lot of ifs and buts there. Yeah, because if the marketing guys don't have that bigger vision of sort of looking beyond the marketing department, yeah, and if they don't have the support of the chief executive officer, the kind of the big guy at the top, they need to have their endorsement. But that slide says that there's a bright future for marketing people. In fact, they actually have much more to do.
So
but you just might not be sitting in the same sort of marketing department as people are sitting in today. You might be sitting in a Centra, in a consultancy. You might not be sitting in one of the major clients.
So it is still a sphere.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So,
I mean, people always need marketing people. Yeah, no, of course.
That's great.
Yeah?
Thanks.
Yeah, don't worry. Go for it.
I don't think I need this one. Mine is actually linked to the previous question because we can do it like that. So because I would like to know more about which questions are actually delegated to consultants agencies right now. It's not so widespread here yet, but I know some companies that are doing that. So is it like a long-term strategy or?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know if I can even answer that question yet, because I think none of us quite know who's doing what with what consultancies. There was one lady here who said that she was working in a marketing department that was working with a consultancy. You're right. There are. I mean, I don't think Accenture has a big office. I don't have anyone here. They have to have someone, a couple of people. I don't know, but they're not like London or New York where they're vast. Where they're buying up agencies. So I think that's, I would say, there's everything to kind of play for on that. Quite the nature of those corporations. You got Accenture just bought. They bought some Droga 5. You've got McKinsey have become big specialists in branding. So it's a thing they do. Yeah, so you always going to look at these different shops. It's like if you've got a brand, you might want to go and speak to McKinsey. If you're an airline that goes, you know what, I think it's about time we reinvented boarding airplanes. Yeah, it's always the same thing. You sit in a room like this. There's a little door, and then there's an airplane at the end of a tunnel. Yeah, it's like, well, maybe you're an airline. You go, you know what, let's change that. But how? So then you probably go to Accenture. And then Accenture go, that's an interesting question. Droga 5? Think about it. How can we change that? So, at the moment, I think we have all these things are still to be seen because it's all, we're in the change. Yeah.
Yeah, that's clear. And the second one was not a part of the slides, but maybe you just have your opinion on this one. It's about the media agency's role in future, because there is a big debate and as well the transition between having the media in-house, including the planning and everything, or having it outside. So, and what's the role of the media agency?
Yeah, it's a good question. Media is crucial. In fact, there was a very interesting talk at Cannes by one of the sort of big creative, sort of famous creative guru guys from, I think it was Publicis, and he was saying, you know what, guys, there's no such thing as the big idea, which we've all been talking about in advertising for the last 20 years, because there's actually each idea is specific, and it depends on, is it on this channel or is it using this particular platform or what? And to that, you need to have media people working closely with you. So he was saying, we need to actually stop this this creative team thing with an art director and a copywriter, because what was all that about? That was invented in the 60s. It's like, there should probably be a media guy in there, because the media is going to define everything, the way the message is consumed. So yes, I definitely think media people need to be working closely. In fact, we have a very we were OMD here. Okay, so Lada's media agency is OMD, and we work very closely with them, and it's actually really important. But we know none of us sit in-house. They don't sit in-house with the agency. I always think independence isn't a bad thing, because sometimes being independent, you get people sort of you know, they come and see you a couple of days later, and they go, you know what, you've changed. You know, whereas if I see you every minute of the day, I don't notice, and I might not challenge you. But then you don't want them too far away, because there's something quite useful about being able to stand next to the water cooler and just go, you know what, I saw that thing on the desk, and what do you think about that? So it's a sort of trying to get a balance between those two worlds in a way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And there is no answer.
Yeah, there's no answer. Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of it depends on chemistry and people as well. I think that's really important, because you know, there might be people who got very good chemistry and you're kind of always close to them, even though they're in an office, you know, on the other side of Moscow. And there's some people who you can be sitting next to them in the office, and you're never close to them because you just don't have the chemistry. So I think there's a lot of a personal thing in that as well.
My English is not good, but I try.
Sounds great.
Okay, what do you think about role of NPD manager in marketing department this millennium?
NPG as in?
NPD, new product development manager.
Ooh, yeah. New product development. I think it's very important, because actually I think then the creative people need to be much more involved in product development. I think that needs to be something that at the moment it's too far away from sort of the marketing and in most organizations, and from creative processes, because there's a lot you can do with product development when you start teaming up new product development people with the creatives or with marketing people. I mean, if you look at cars, you know, Renault produced some, you know, around when the release of Star Wars, they produced a sort of Millennium Falcon electric car. I forgot the name of it, that little baby electric thing they have. But you know, they brought out some interesting vehicles that were basically marketing cars. And often when you begin to talk to these people, there are all sorts of things you can do. You know, I have some friends in the Lada Design Bureau, and just by talking to them, you suddenly realize that you can do a lot to a car by you know, changing some simple things like different mirrors or wheels or stuff like that. So I think having those people closer and not having them far away, I think is very important. Yeah?
I think so.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. But that's all. I mean, in many ways, that's all about. I mean, which slide was it? You know, there was a slide about getting everyone, you know, managed. Must see basically people working together. You know, consumers, suppliers, shareholders, stakeholders. We all need to work much closer together. No, I haven't gone into. Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I could probably. But in some ways, you know, things. Which one? I'm trying to think of any of the cases. What cases? I had some cases I hid. I didn't show you. Let me just see. But I mean, yeah, for example, the Marmite's quite interesting. I mean, there's kind of a bit of a product development thing going on here. Yeah, they haven't actually created a whole new range of Marmite, but they've created a sort of a product which they use for marketing, which is this sort of box and testing and stuff. So but there's some other things like the fuel band. You know, it's quite old now, which Nike developed. It was about 10 years ago, where they the agency worked with the new product development people. Actually. Yeah, actually, here's an interesting case. I didn't show you this one, actually. This is Microsoft, where they have, in fact, I'll show it to you, because actually it kind of, in a way, answers your question. So this is actually part of this was in my first group of standing for something. Hang on. Yeah, so when I talked about brand active, yeah? So it's like trying to activate your brand. Yeah. Then I showed you this guy, yeah, and I showed you a couple of others. The one I didn't show you was actually a product development story, so which actually is quite interesting. Hang on, let me get it. It was Microsoft who are developing their game consoles for handicapped people.
We
We wanted to create a new controller for gamers with limited mobility that felt natural for them. We reached out to different members of the accessibility community. They gave us a ton of feedback on the device itself.
My name is Ian. I'm Taylor. My name is Owen, and I am 9.5 years old.
CBS This Morning, we're revealing the top-rated Super Bowl commercials.
Starring some unforgettably charismatic young people.
You think of Microsoft as a rational product, and suddenly they're bringing this visual storytelling, making an emotional connection. That you're not going to forget that commercial for a long time.
Pretty cool commercial last night involving an 8-year-old from Renton. He has an amputated left hand.
I just wanted to say thanks to my 20,000 subscribers. I can hit the buttons just as fast as they can. Now everyone can play.
It's not a nice case. See where you got, product. Yeah. I hear that a lot. I mean, there are a lot of issues, and there's still a long road to go. Yeah. And also, we sit in Moscow, which is a different country compared to the rest of Russia. But
I think it's my.
But then you need something like this, because one of the,
But we need. Yes.
Yeah, but see, what was interesting in that case, you see, because it was in the first 30 seconds, it said, we had our product developers and the PR people kind of like working together, sort of in answer to your question. And this was as much about creating a gaming experience for the kids as it was about opening people's eyes to the possibilities of these kids. Yeah, it was about showing people, it's like, actually, these kids can actually play games and do cool stuff, even if they haven't got a hand. They can still, they're amazing. I remember when I first discovered blind people go to the cinema. I said I like going to the cinema a lot. I discovered blind people go to the cinema. And I remember thinking, that's weird. I can't see, And then you think, hang on a moment, why am I assuming that? Because actually, when you go to the cinema, you enjoy the experience, actually, of watching a film with other people. I mean, that's very important about it's like my story doing thing. So when you're in a cinema, it's about sharing an experience in a dark room with lots of other people watching a movie. And blind people actually they hear the film, and they also feel the resonance. They actually feel physicality of sound. It makes a much bigger impression on them, and they get an experience. They love it. And in fact, there's a very cool blind guy on YouTube who's a blind movie film critic. Can you imagine? So you begin to look at these things, and it begins to change your perspective, and you go, "Wow, okay." So these guys, when I go to if I just sit there and shut my eyes, I think, "Oh, this is terrible. I'm being deprived of something." But they don't see it like that. They see it as something completely different. And that's what that kid was saying. They were saying, or one of the mothers was saying, it's like, we suddenly see the possibilities of what these kids can do. Yeah?
because of this, you have a lot of job in Russia now, because we are moving to European style, and it's nearest 5 years, and stay in Russia.
Right. Things are moving forward fast, so yeah. Great. Right, пожалуйста, спасибо. Right.